Good evening and welcome back. Tonight, we are going to the largest city in the world, and we are going there to do the one thing nobody remembers great capitals for. We are going to watch it sleep. It is a winter night in the 740s, and the city is Chang'an, capital of Tang, China. 1 million people live inside its walls, more than in any other city on earth in this century. By day it is silks and horses, markets and ministries, poets and paperwork, the roaring golden center of an empire. But at dusk, every evening without fail, something remarkable happens. The great drums sound across the rooftops, the ward gates swing shut street by street, and the largest city in the world lies down, on purpose, altogether, and goes to sleep. The whole capital keeps bedtime the way a monastery keeps its hours. And tonight, with snow falling on 1 million roof tiles, we are going to keep it too. The housekeeping first, briefly as always. If these long, quiet nights help you sleep, subscribing is the kindest way to keep them coming, and it truly helps. The player will hold your place if you drift off somewhere inside the city walls. That is all. The day's business is now closed by imperial decree and ours. Here is the road ahead, so your mind can set the map down. We will watch the evening drum close the city, gate by gate. We will settle into one small courtyard house in one quiet ward, the home of a records official and his family, and spend the evening with them. The brazier and the supper, the lamplight and the ink, the grandmother and the children. We will learn how this city tells time in the dark, with water and incense, and the great drum tower counting the watches. We will walk the snowy lanes with the night watchman, look in on the sleeping camels of the Silk Road, visit the winter garden and its plum tree, and then ride the deep hours gently, watch by watch, all the way to the dawn bell. Nothing will go wrong tonight. No alarms, no armies, no history. Just a city, breathing slow under the snow. And the permission, as always, before we go in. You are not required to follow the route. You are not required to remember the names. The words will walk on without you at the same unhurried pace. And if you slip away somewhere between the drum and the bell, that is not a missed appointment. That is the appointment kept. Sleep is the point. The city is just the lullaby. So, let the pillow take the whole weight of your head. Let the day close its gates. It is late afternoon over Chang'an. The snow clouds are low and soft, and 1 million suppers are beginning to send up their smoke. Let's go and see. From above, in the last gray light, Chang'an is not so much a city as a lesson in calm, drawn at enormous scale. It is a rectangle, vast and exact, nearly 6 miles by 5, wrapped in walls of rammed earth the color of dusk itself. And inside the walls, the city lies in a grid as neat as a chessboard. 11 great avenues run north and south, 14 run east and west, and the blocks between them, more than 100 of them, are the wards, each one walled in its turn, each with its gates, each a small walled village inside the walled metropolis. The plan is not an accident, and it is not modesty. It is philosophy, laid out in earth and tile. A capital, the builders reasoned, should mirror the order of heaven, and heaven, in their reckoning, is orderly beyond all things. So the city is a diagram of peace. The palace sits at the north, facing south, as the pole star sits in the sky. The two great markets, east and west, balance each other like weights on a scale. The avenues run straight as ruled lines, the widest of them broader than any street on earth. 500 feet of open ground down the city's spine. Standing water freezes in the wheel ruts tonight, and the snow is beginning to hold on the immense emptiness, unmarked now from wall to wall. 1 million people, and from up here at dusk you can hardly hear them. That is the first wonder of this place. The city hums, but it hums low, a floor of sound made of 100,000 courtyard suppers, of mules in lanes, of shop shutters going up for the night, of temple bells finishing the day. Smoke rises from the wards in 10,000 slow threads, charcoal and millet straw, gathering into a soft haze that catches the last light and holds it a while over the roof tiles. A lid of amber over the whole gray grid, and the roof tiles themselves. Try to see them as the snow does arriving. Ridge upon ridge upon ridge, gray clay in overlapping rows, curved like waves. A million small roofs and great ones. Temple roofs with their upswept eaves. Tower roofs stacked story on story. All of it patient under the first white dust of the storm. The snow means to spend all night making this city one quiet thing, and looking down at the grid at dusk, walls within walls, order within order, you can see the city means to let it. The drum tower counts the watch, and the city sleeps. That is our refrain tonight, and the tower has not yet begun its counting, but it will, in a very few minutes, from that dark bulk rising at the city's center. And when it does, you will hear how 1,000,000 people are put to bed, come down closer into the streets while they are still awake to see. At dusk in Chang'an, the day does not fade out. It is closed formally on schedule, by the most soothing act of government ever devised. Listen, it is beginning now. From the drum tower at the heart of the city comes the first stroke, deep and round. A sound you feel in your chest before your ears agree to it. Then another and another, unhurried, enormous, patient. The great drums of the tower are taller than a man, and their evening roll is the city's official sunset. 800 measured strokes, wave after slow wave of thunder-soft sound rolling out over the roof tiles in every direction, over the markets and the ministries, over the temple courts and the caravan yards, out to the furthest wards against the walls. Nothing about it is alarming. That is its genius. It is the deepest, calmest voice in the world, saying one thing to 1,000,000 people. Enough. Come home. Day is done. And the city obeys, not in a scramble, but in a long-practiced ripple. In the two great markets, the shutters have been rattling home since the first stroke, stall by stall, the last customers walking off with their bundles through the thickening snow. The avenues, so vast and busy an hour ago, are emptying like tide flats, riders and carts and porters all flowing toward their own ward gates, hoods up, breath steaming, unhurried, because everyone in this city has made this walk at this hour all their lives, and knows the drum's arithmetic to the stroke. Officials in their winter robes come out of the ministry gates in dark, unhurried streams. A last string of camels sways up from the western market toward the caravanserai, bells knocking softly, snow settling on their double humps, and even they seem to know the way to bed. Then all across the city, the gates, ward by ward, the heavy leaves swing to, and the bars come down. 100 distant soft booms scattered across the dusk like the closing of 100 great books. The avenues fall silent first, and stay silent, patrolled and empty, a grid of white under the darkening snow sky. Inside the wards, the lanes go on murmuring a while, doors and dinners and children called in. But the public day is over. The drum roll ends on one last stroke that rolls away to the walls and comes back as stillness. No other city on earth goes to bed like this, all together, at one signal, behind ordered gates. It will strike some travelers as strict, and perhaps it is, but stand in the falling snow and hear the last echo settle over 1,000,000 people housed and walled and warming toward supper, and you may hear it the way the city itself hears it. The largest lullaby in the world, sung by a drum, every single night. The drum tower counts the watch, and the city sleeps. The counting has begun. The first watch of the night is open. Now quickly, before a certain ward gate closes, let us slip inside. We come in through the gate of a quiet residential ward in the city's southeast, one of the 100, just as the gatekeeper is putting his shoulder to the second leaf. And what closes behind us is not a prison but a neighborhood, drawing its coat tight for the night. The ward is a walled square perhaps half a mile across, and inside it lies a small complete world. Lanes cross it in their own modest grid, lined with the walls of courtyard houses, gray brick and rammed earth, snow settling along their tiled copings. A small temple holds the northeast corner, its incense drifting thin into the snow. A well square, a few shops inside the gate, shuttered now, the noodle seller's banner taken in, the wine shop's lamp still burning for its last hour of neighbors. Perhaps 10,000 people live inside this one square, and there are 100 squares like it, some smaller, some far more crowded, and that is how 1 million people can sleep quietly. The city is not one enormous room, it is 100 small ones, each with its own door latched. The gatekeeper finishes with the bar and hangs his lantern on its hook, and the gate lamp and the snow make the little plaza inside the gate into a globe of amber. He is an old soldier with a face like a walnut, and he holds this post the way the fire keepers of all our knights have held theirs. He knows the faces of his ward the way a shepherd knows a flock, and half of them by name. He knows who is late tonight, a physician attending a birth 2 lanes over, and will listen for that particular knock, and open the small wicket in the great leaf without being asked twice. Between now and dawn the gate is his, and the ward sleeps inside his keeping. And this arrangement is so old and so ordinary here that no one thinks of it as an arrangement at all. It is simply what a gate is. Walk the lanes with me toward our house for the night. The snow creaks underfoot, fresh and dry. Lamplight leaks warm at the seams of shutters. Suppers breathe out of courtyard chimneys. Millet and cabbage, garlic and pork fat. And somewhere a grandmother's voice is telling somebody to come in off the step this instant, in an accent the capital shares with no other city. A dog considers us from a doorway and files us correctly under harmless. Down the 3rd lane, at a modest gate under a snow-capped tile roof, a paper lantern burns with a single character brushed on it, the family's name, and the gate stands ajar exactly as if someone knew to expect us. The drum tower counts the watch, and the city sleeps, ward by walled ward, 10,000 souls to a square, each square with its walnut-faced keeper, and its one lit lantern in the snow. In we go. Through the modest gate, past the spirit screen that keeps the lane's eyes and the winter wind alike from looking straight into the household's life, and we are standing in the courtyard. And the courtyard is the whole idea of this house. So stand a moment in the falling snow and take it in. The house is not one building. It is a small walled compound, rooms ranged around an open square of sky. The main hall faces south across the court, catching every hour of winter sun on its lattice. The east and west wings face each other across the paving. Children and grandmother, kitchen and stores. The walls of the compound turn their blank brick backs on the world, and every window in the house looks inward, onto this one shared square of paved ground with its old plum tree in the corner, black-bowed, bare, holding a first ridge of snow along every branch. A courtyard house is a family's architecture drawn as a diagram, and it is the diagram of a good night. Outside the walls, the lane, the ward, the city, the empire, arranged in their boxes like the city's own grid. Inside them, one hearth's worth of people arranged around one open heart of sky. The snow falls into the court silently, whitening the paving stones, and the lit lattice of the rooms glows around it on three sides. Paper windows the color of tea and honey, patterned with the shadow play of the family moving through its evening. From the kitchen wing comes the knock of a cleaver and the breath of the stove. From the main hall, a child's voice and an answer too low to hear, and the small ring of a brazier being settled. The lattice windows deserve their own moment, because they are one of this civilization's quiet masterpieces of comfort. The frames are carved wood, geometric, endlessly various, and they are papered, not glazed, with tough mulberry paper, oiled and fine. Paper holds the warmth better than you would believe, and lets the light through both ways, so that a house at evening becomes a lantern, and a lantern is what our house is now. 3 glowing walls around a square of falling snow. From inside, the snow on the lattice makes the softest light there is. From out here, the family is a shadow theater. The grandmother's profile crossing a pane, small hands raised in some game. The mother's shape bending to a lamp. By the plum tree, the household's old servant is sweeping the day's last snow from the walk with a broom of bound twigs, unhurriedly, since more is falling even as he sweeps, and he seems to know it and not to mind. Some sweeping is for the pavement, and some is for the evening itself, a way of putting the court to bed. The drum tower counts the watch, and the city sleeps, and inside 100,000 courtyards like this one, the snow is falling into the family's own private square of night, watched by lamplit paper on 3 sides. Welcome as a guest. Let us go in where the lattice is glowing. Slide the door aside, step over the sill and come into the main hall, into the warmth and the lamplight, and meet the people whose night we are keeping. Because a house is only rooms until you know who breathes in it. The master of the house is a records official, 6th rank, in the great archive of the Board of Revenue, which is to say he spends his days among ledgers and brushes, keeping the empire's accounts of grain and cloth in a hand so clear his superiors pass his registers around as models. He is 40, mild, exact, nearsighted from his work, and at this moment he is sitting by the brazier in his padded house robe with a small cup of warmed wine, being climbed on by his youngest, which he permits with the gravity of a mountain permitting goats. He passed the examinations 20 years ago, a farm boy who wrote his way through the most demanding tests on earth, and the framed calligraphy above the door in his late father's hand says only, "Patience is a field. The mistress of the house runs everything else, and everything else is considerable. The stores, the servants' work, the accounts of the household, the silk on the loom in the west wing, the children's manners, the calendar of festivals and duties and debts of courtesy that binds a capital family into its web of kin." She is at the table now with the day's last mending in her lap, issuing the evening's quiet orders to the cook's wife with the economy of a general who has never once needed to raise her voice. We have met her before, this woman, in every century we have visited. She was tending the lamps in the bone house. She owned the lodge on the plains. She kept the keys in the mansion. The title changes. The competence does not. The grandmother has the warmest seat beside the brazier, wrapped to the chin, tiny and bright-eyed and entirely alert to everything in the room, particularly whatever anyone hopes she has not noticed. She came to this city as a bride 60 years ago, in another emperor's reign. Her hands, folded on her lap warmer, have spun enough silk thread to reach, by her own estimate, from here to the sea, and she does not make estimates carelessly. And the children, 3 of them, the eldest, a daughter of 14, is at the loom side lamp with her embroidery, working plum blossoms into a sleeve band with stitches fine as frost. Already, visibly, her grandmother's heir. The son, 10, has ink on his fingers, permanent ink, structural ink, because he is at the age of copybooks, and his evening pages wait for him on the study table with all the menace a blank page can hold for a boy of 10. The youngest 4 is on her father, as reported, conducting mountaineering, besides the cook and his wife, and the old sweeper of the courtyard. That is the household. 8 souls in us, around one brazier, inside one courtyard, inside one ward, inside one wall, inside the falling snow. The drum tower counts the watch, and the city sleeps. And this particular corner of it is now fully introduced, and supper is nearly ready, and you can smell it from here. Before supper, meet the household's hearth, because in this city of paper windows and tile roofs, winter is answered not with a great blazing fireplace, but with something smaller, closer, and in its own way more companionable. The brazier. It stands at the center of the main hall on 3 bronze feet, a wide, shallow basin of worked metal, older than the marriage that brought it here, polished by generations of proximity. In it, on a bed of white ash, the charcoal burns, and Tang charcoal is a craft in itself. Hardwood baked slow in the kilns of the western hills until it is all structure and no smoke, then carried into the city by mule, sold by the basket in the markets, stacked in every household storeroom against exactly this month. Good charcoal lights readily, burns long and even, glows a deep mandarin orange, and gives off almost nothing but heat, which is why 1 million people can warm themselves under paper windows all winter without smoking themselves out of house and home. The brazier's warmth is not the mansion furnace's whole house tide. It is a hearth you gather to, a warm island, and the gathering is the point. The family's evening arranges itself around the basin in a circle of knees and hands, the grandmother closest by right, the cat closer still by nerve, and the warmth makes the circle, and the circle makes the evening. Hands are warmed over it between tasks. The father's wine sits warming at its edge in a little bronze ewer. Chestnuts roast in the ash at the rim. The children's winter treasury, raked out one by one through the evening and juggled hand to hand with ceremonial suffering. Later, coals from this basin will be carried on a small shovel to the bedrooms, to the little braziers there, and tucked under the quilted bed warmers, so that every bed in the house tonight will be lit, so to speak, from this one-parent fire, the way the lamps of the bone house were lit from the hearth, the way all the fires of all our nights have handed their warmth outward and onward. Mind the etiquette of it, which every child here absorbs by 6. One does not spit into the brazier, crowd it, or stir another household's coals uninvited. The tongues belong to the grandmother's side. The best chestnut goes to the guest, which tonight, in a manner of speaking, is you, and it is offered now, hot, split, sweet, entirely real in every way that matters at this hour. The drum tower counts the watch, and the city sleeps, and 100,000 braziers glow their mandarin orange behind 100,000 paper lattices, each one a small warm sun with a family in orbit, each one banked, before bed, into tomorrow. Supper comes to the table in the main hall on trays from the kitchen wing, crossing the snowy court under covers at a trot, the cook's wife's slippers printing the whiteness twice a minute, and the family draws up around the low table in the brazier's warmth, and the best hour of the household's day begins. The meal is plain and deep, winter cooking from a good kitchen, millet steamed soft, the North's own grain, a mound of it breathing in its wooden tub, wheat noodles in broth, hand-pulled this hour, slippery and long on purpose, because length is life in the household's small superstitions, and no one cuts a noodle who could slurp it. a dish of cabbage stewed melting with dried shrimp, bean curd braised gold in the pot with garlic, and a spoonful of the dark bean, paste that perfumes the whole lane at this hour, pickles from the great jars in the storeroom, sharp and bright, the summer's vegetables kept safe in brine and thyme, and because the day is cold and the family is well, a little pork belly braised to silk, one shared dish, doled by the mother with exact justice, and one extra morsel to the grandmother, who protests annually and accepts nightly. They eat with chopsticks and porcelain spoons, bowls raised, and the table has the sound of every good supper we have ever kept, in any century you like. The click of bowls, the slurp of noodles, entirely polite here and proof of appetite. The father, mild all day among his ledgers, tells the day's one story, a colleague's memorandum gone missing and found, at last, filed by a new clerk under the wrong reign entirely, and the grandmother laughs until she has to put her spoon down, and the children laugh at her laughing. The son negotiates his cabbage. The youngest is fed morsels from 3 directions, like a small shrine receiving offerings. Steam rises. The lattice glows. Snow falls into the courtyard 6 feet away, on the other side of paper, and warm the rice wine once more, because the father will have his second small cup tonight, his winter allowance, and he will hold it a moment under his nose before he drinks, as his father did. The empire this man serves runs from the deserts to the sea. Its census rolls, some of which he has copied with his own brush, count more households than any accounting in the history of the world, and every last one of those households, he would tell you gladly, a little expansively on his second cup, is at this hour doing exactly this. Bowls and steam and lamplight, family drawn in a ring, cold outside, warmth within. The empire at night, he would say, lifting the cup an inch is only this multiplied. The drum tower counts the watch, and the city sleeps, and first it dines. 1,000,000 tables under the one snow, and no emperor has ever commanded anything half so well ordered as supper. After supper, the boy's hour of reckoning, and the father crosses the court with him through the falling snow to the study in the east wing, lantern in hand, and we will follow, because on this small nightly errand rides most of what this civilization believes. The study is 1 bay wide, and it is the father's kingdom and the household's shrine to the possible. Shelves of books, real books, paper books, scrolls upon scrolls of them, more than a farm family 2 generations back could have dreamed of owning. The desk under the lattice, and on it the 4 treasures, as the phrase goes, brush, ink, paper, inkstone, each in its place like tools laid out for fine work. A brazier of its own, small, glowing, because ink freezes and fingers stiffen and learning in winter is a physical act. The boy grinds the ink himself, which is the first discipline. Water from the little dropper, 3 turns of the ink stick against the stone, then 30 more, the black deepening in the well, the pine soot smell rising, the same smell in this room as in 10,000 studies across the city tonight, the smell of homework in the high noon of the Tang. Then the copybook, the brush held upright, the wrist lifted, and column by careful column, the characters. The father sits by with his own reading, not hovering, present, and corrects with a fingertip on the page, not the hand there that stroke leans, let it stand up straight, and the boy breathes through his nose and makes the stroke stand up straight. Understand what is actually happening at that desk, because it is one of the quiet wonders of the age. The examinations that made this family's fortune are open, in principle, to nearly any boy in the empire with brush and patience. A farmer's son who masters these characters, these classics, this discipline of wrist and memory, can rise as this boy's own father rose from a millet field to the archives of the state. The system has its unfairnesses, and the father, being honest, could list them. But the lamp in this study is lit by a genuinely astonishing idea, that the gate of advancement should be a page of writing, that ink outranks birth. 10,000 studies are lit by it tonight. The city's true furnace room, a poet who lodges 2 wards over likes to say, is not in any palace. It is every desk with a boy at it, grinding ink in winter. 20 columns, and the day's debt is paid. The boy's last characters are visibly better than his first, which is all a knight asks. Brushes washed, in the ritual order, and stood tips up in their jar like winter reeds. The drum tower counts the watch, and the city sleeps. And in 10,000 lamplit studies, the ink is drying on 10,000 pages, and some of those pages, though no one can yet say which, will run the empire in 30 years. Back across the snowy court, in the West Wing, the household's other craft is at its evening hour, and it glows warmer than the study, and sounds better too. So let us end the working part of the evening there, among the women and the silk. The loom stands along the inner wall, and on it, web by patient web, grows the household's finest wealth. Silk, the mistress works it in the good hours of daylight, but winter evenings belong to the smaller silks, and tonight the loom rests while the needles are out. She and her daughter sit in the ring of 2 lamps with the brazier between them, the daughter at her plum blossom sleeve band, the mother finishing the collar of a padded winter robe, the grandmother presiding over both with her hands at rest, which is her way of working now, and no less skilled for that. Watch the daughter's needle, because you have watched this exact lamplit scene before, and she would be pleased to know it. An Ice Age girl drilling ivory beads by a stone lamp, a Lakota girl couching quills in glass by a lodge fire, and now a Tang girl laying silk on silk, stitch by stitch no longer than a frost needle, building a branch of white plum against dark blue, the blossoms opening under her hands all winter as slowly and certainly as they will open on the courtyard tree itself at winter's end. The fine work of the world has always been done like this, at night, by lamplight, by young women in the warmest corner of the house, and it has always been both wealth and language. This sleeve band will say things at the spring festival about this house, its daughters, its standards, that no one will need to speak aloud. The silk itself is the empire's second currency, and the household knows its whole biography. The worms fed on mulberry leaf in the spring attics of kin, outside the walls, the cocoons steamed and unwound, each one a single thread half a mile long, a fact the grandmother still produces at intervals because it deserves producing. The thread spun, dyed, woven tacks traded, bolts of it lie folded in the storeroom chest, part savings, part daughter's future, and bolts of its cousins are swaying west tonight on the backs of the camels. We will visit before we sleep, headed for oases and bazaars, and at the far end of the long road, for empires that know this city only as a rumor of silk. The grandmother, watching the 2 bent heads, says the thing she says on winter evenings. That thread is long, and evenings are long, and both are for using well. And the needles go on agreeing with her softly, stitch by stitch by stitch. The drum tower counts the watch, and the city sleeps. And in the lamplight of the West Wing, the plum branch gains one more blossom, and the winter, one stitch at a time, is being turned into spring. Cross the court to the kitchen wing, while the evening is still young there, because the cook is at the finish of his day's work, and a Tang kitchen at supper time is a small hot theater of skills. This world has spent 1,000 years perfecting, and will spend another 1,000 perfecting further. and it smells the way contentment would smell if contentment cooked. The room is brick-floored and low-beamed, lit by the stove's own glow and one hanging lamp. The stove is the master fact, a built masonry range with its fire door and its round openings above, where the pots sit down into the flame's throat. On it the great shallow pan hisses, the wide, thin-walled iron pan that this cuisine is built around, quick as a whip, hot as argument. In it, the cabbage went from garden cold to glistening, in the time it took the cook to say so. Beside it, the tiered baskets of woven bamboo stand steaming over their pot, breathing out the smell of the buns within. And the tall jars along the wall hold the kitchen's deep pantry, soy and vinegar and wine, pickles in their brine, the dark bean pastes, the salted riches that carry a northern kitchen through the winter. The cook is a spare man of 50, with forearms like rope, and he works with an economy that looks like slowness until you count what gets done. He and the household's mistress hold the kitchen in an old professional treaty, her stores, his fire, and between them, the family eats better than its rank strictly requires. His wife works opposite him at the block, cleaver rocking through the greens, and the two of them pass pans and words in the shorthand of 30 years, a language of about 9 syllables, all of them sufficient. And above the stove, in its small niche in the chimney breast, sits the kitchen's other resident, the stove god, a modest painted image of a dignified personage, set up with respect and a little soot, the household's most domestic divinity. He lives in the warmth, observes the year of the family from the best seat in the house, and at the year's end, as everyone from the emperor to the smallest child knows, he goes up with the smoke to make his annual report on the household's conduct, and is sent off with offerings of sweet things, so that his report may be sweet too. The cook's wife keeps the niche dusted, and the little offering dish filled. It is half faith, half housekeeping, wholly serious in the way of things that are also gently smiled at, and it means the kitchen fire has a witness, a guardian, and a residency, which every kept fire we have known deserves, and this one formally has. Supper goes out across the snowy court on its covered trays, and the stove settles toward its banking, and the stove god regards his warm domain through the steam, well disposed, one hopes, and well fed certainly. The drum tower counts the watch, and the city sleeps, and in 100,000 kitchen, niches 100,000 painted guardians keep company with the banked fires, the most watched-over warmth on earth. After supper, the tea, and the tea deserves its own unhurried chapter, because in this dynasty, it is rising from a southern habit into a civilization, and the making of it, on a snowy night by brazier light, is one of the quietly perfect things this world does. The tea comes from the far south, from mist-terraced hills 1,000 miles down the rivers and canals, pressed for travel into hard, dried cakes, wrapped in paper, and dear enough that the household supply lives in a lacquered box with the good things. The father takes down the box himself, because the evening tea is his small office, as the courtyard sweeping is the old servant's, and its right has settled into his hands over 20 years, until it is less a task than a way of arriving at the evening. A piece of the cake is toasted first, held near the brazier's glow on a fork of bronze until it wakes and breathes its roasted fragrance, then ground small in the little mill. The water heats in its ewer on the brazier, and here the connoisseurship of the age concentrates itself, for the water must be caught at the right moment of its life, past the first shrimp pie bubbles, into the strings of pearls, before the full rolling boil that the manuals of this very century will call old water, too tired for tea, a whisper of salt in the northern manner, then the ground tea cast onto the water, stirred as it returns to its simmer, the pale froth gathered and prized, in the manner the tea masters of this very century are setting down in their manuals, and the bowls warmed first, filled each with its share of the pale jade liquor and its foam, and handed each to its person, grandmother first, guest, if guest there be, honored precisely, then the drinking, which is the actual ceremony, and it consists of sitting still. The bowls warm the hands, the steam carries the high, clean fragrance, hills and mist, and a faint sweetness under the toast, the far green south arriving in the snowbound north as a breath. The talk drops by a tone, the brazier ticks. Somewhere a scholar in this very city is writing, or soon will write, that tea's whole virtue is this, that it cools the heat of wine and clears the fog of sleep, but gently, a moderation in a cup, and the family around this brazier is the argument's proof. They are not enlivened. They are settled, warmed from the center outward, brought to the same low simmer as the kettle, ready in a little while for bed. The bowls are rinsed and racked. The box is locked on its treasure. The last of the froth is given, by long custom, to the smallest child awake to receive it. A bird's portion, mostly foam, received tonight by the eldest daughter on behalf of the sleeping, and drunk with the appropriate gravity. The drum tower counts the watch, and the city sleeps, and it goes toward its sleeping a little warmer, and a little clearer for the leaf of the far hills, simmered pale in 100,000 bowls, the South's nightly gift to the winter North. While the household drinks its tea, spare a thought and one snowy detour for the two great engines of this city's day, because the East Market and the West Market are asleep now behind their own walls, and a sleeping market, like a sleeping ballroom, is a wonder the daylight never gets to see. Each market is a walled city of commerce, gated like the wards, closed by the same dusk drums. Inside, the lanes run between the shuttered rows by trade, whole streets of one thing each: the silk row, the ironmonger's row, the apothecaries with their 1,000 drawers, the goldsmiths, the saddlers, the sellers of paper and ink, the cookshops cold now, their great stoves banked, their benches stacked. By day the West Market alone is a roar of tongues, Persian and Turkic, and the oasis languages bargaining against the capital's own, the most cosmopolitan square mile on earth. Tonight it is lane upon lane of snow-capped shutters, aisle upon white aisle, silent as the ballroom under its muslin, patrolled by the market guard with their lanterns and by the market's own well-fed cats, on whom the granary rows depend and who conduct themselves accordingly, like small officials. Behind the shutters, the goods sleep in good order, bolts of silk in their wrappers, ranked by grade. The apothecaries' drawers hold their dried 100 fragrances in the dark, ginseng and licorice, dried tangerine peel and cassia bark, each in its labeled bed. The metal rows smell faintly of oil and char, tools hung in their sizes. In the strong rooms, the money of a dozen kingdoms waits in locked chests, and in the pledge shops, the winter's sad and practical traffic, cloaks and bracelets pawned against spring, each tagged with its owner's hope of return. The ledgers of 10,000 stalls lie ruled and balanced, brush-totaled by lamplight an hour after the drums, because this city's merchants close their books nightly, as the housekeeper closed hers, as the record office closes the empire's, and the day is not truly over anywhere in the world. We have learned by now, until somebody has written it down. At dawn drum the gates will open and the roar will resume, camels and porters, silks and arguments, the enormous cheerful noise of 1,000,000 people provisioning themselves. But now, at night, you can walk the white aisles and hear what a great market actually is under all its noise. A larder and a wardrobe and a toolbox, and a treasury kept for a whole city, locked and patrolled and dreaming, so that tomorrow can be supplied. The drum tower counts the watch, and the city sleeps, and its two great markets sleep the deepest, having talked the most. They're 10,000 shutters holding 10,000 mornings worth of everything, under one snow. Do you remember, from the closing of the ward gate, the one lawful lantern still abroad, the physician attending a birth 2 lanes over? The night has deepened, the second watch has sounded, and now look down the lane through the falling snow. That same lantern is coming home, and its owner deserves a chapter, because someone in every city of every century is awake on exactly this errand, and blessed be all of them. The physician is a tired, cheerful man of 60, in a snow-dusted cloak, his lacquered case of medicines slung at his side, and his night has gone well. A daughter, loud and pink, in the house of the carpenter, mother resting, grandmother enthroned, father useless with joy, the oldest good news there is. He was fetched at dusk before the gates closed, and now he walks the white lane home with the particular walk of a man whose weariness has been paid in full, pausing at the ward gate's wicket, where the walnut-faced keeper, who has been listening for his knock these several hours as promised, opens before he raises his hand, and asks the knights one question with his eyebrows, and receives the answer, a girl, all well, and nods as if he had arranged it himself. The physician's case, if we peer inside as he sets it down at his own gate, is the pharmacy of the age in miniature, and it is not to be condescended to. Dried herbs in their folded papers, each labeled in his small running hand, the materials of a tradition that has been observing, recording, and correcting itself for 1,000 years before tonight. Ginger and cinnamon twig for cold conditions, ephedra for the closed chest, licorice to harmonize, needles in a bone tube for the channels, moxa for the deep chill, and a little honey paste of soothing herbs for coughing children, of which he dispenses a great deal in this month, and charges for less than half. His teacher's books classified hundreds of remedies. His own notebooks, 40 winters of nights like this one, classify something else. When to worry, when to wait, when a fever will turn at dawn, when a household needs medicine, and when it only needs sleep and salted porridge and one calm voice saying so. His wife has left the lamp burning and the kang hot. He drinks the tea she left banked in its cozy of straw, writes 3 lines in the night's log by habit, birth, hour names, and is asleep before the watchman's next round knocks past his wall, adding his own tired breath to the city's great communal rest. One more keeper off duty, one more small light out. The drum tower counts the watch, and the city sleeps, and it is one soul larger tonight than it was at dusk, pink and loud, and already fed, in a carpenter's warm room 2 lanes over, which is, of all the night's news in the whole capital, the best. Before the deep hours take us, notice one material that has been everywhere around us all evening, so common tonight that it has become invisible, and stop to honor it, because this city runs on it, and the world beyond these walls scarcely knows it exists. Paper. It is in the windows. First, as we have seen, the oiled mulberry panes that turn every house to a lantern and hold the warmth against the snow, but follow it onward through the sleeping city. It wraps the tea cake in the lacquered box, and the medicines in the physician's case. It hangs at every gate as the name lantern, and flies in summer as the children's kites, sleeping now rolled in the storeroom rafters. It is the poet's page above the wine shop, and the boy's copybook in the east wing, and the ledgers of the 10,000 stalls, and the winter count of this civilization is kept on it by the ton. In the archives where the father works, register upon register, The grain and cloth and households of the empire, brush-written, bound, and shelved in halls where clerks walk lamplit aisles of the stuff, the way the librarians of Alexandria walked their racks of scrolls, and with the same settled certainty that what is written and kept is what will not be lost. The craft of it came out of this land's own long ingenuity. Rags and bark and bamboo beaten to slurry, lifted sheet by sheet on screens, pressed and dried, and this century makes it in quantities and qualities no other place on earth can imagine. Snow-white sheets for the court, buff working stock for the ministries, tough oiled grades for windows and umbrellas, soft grades for the lamps. Westward along the camel road, the secret is only now beginning to travel, and it will be centuries yet before the lands at the road's far end learn what this city takes utterly for granted tonight. That thought can be made this cheap to keep, and therefore this safe. And there is a tenderness about paper that suits the hour. Stone remembers loudly in monuments. Bronze remembers expensively in bells. Paper remembers the way this whole city sleeps, quietly, in bulk, everyone together. Page on page in the dark of the archives, the emperor's edicts and the carpenter's birth record from tonight, the poet's 11 characters and the boy's wobbly copybook strokes, all resting in the same thin white keeping. Snow, the grandmother said once, and the household kept it, is the sky's paper, and every roof in the city is written on tonight, and the morning will read it. The drum tower counts the watch, and the city sleeps, wrapped in paper against the cold, recorded on paper against forgetting, lit through paper by its lamps, the softest armor any civilization ever wore, and among the strongest. Just inside the ward gate, where its lamp still burns for its final licensed hour, the little wine shop is keeping the last public warmth of the neighborhood's day. And we should look in before it shutters, because every world we have wintered in has kept some room like this one, and this is the Tang dynasty's version, and it is a good one. It is one room, warm and low, smelling of warmed wine and charcoal and wet wool. The brazier glows at the middle. The proprietress, a widow of great firmness and greater kindness, ladles the hot rice wine from its steaming jar into small cups, and the last customers of the evening sit close around the warmth on their stools, with their cups held in both hands. The gatekeeper, off his post for the length of one cup while the watchman covers the gate, which is irregular, and 20 years' custom. The ward stonemason, thawing after a day of cold chisels. A clerk from the canal office, putting off the last snowy lane between himself and home, and an old man who comes every night, says little, warms much, and is, by the widow's unspoken policy, never hurried. The talk is the talk of last hours everywhere, low and round, and going nowhere on purpose. The snow, of course, its depth debated, its duration forecast by every school of theory. The price of charcoal, held stable, all agree, by the goodness of heaven and the fear of the market inspectors. The carpenter's new daughter, 2 lanes over, born this very evening, toasted quietly by the whole room, including the old man, who raises his cup half an inch, which from him is oratory. Somebody retells, badly, a story from the storyteller's hall by the East Market, and is corrected on 3 points by the clerk, and tells it worse the second time, to general satisfaction. This room is the ward's small parliament and its warm anteroom, the place between the day and the household, and its work is the same work the visiting uncle did in the lodge on the plains, the same the servants' hall did below the mansion. It knits the neighbors, news crosses here, and kindness, and the temperature of the community is taken nightly around this brazier, and found tonight normal, which is the finest reading there is. Then the hour, the widow says it without saying it, by beginning to rack the cups, and the room rises, settles its few coins, wraps itself, and files out into the white lane with the steam of farewells. The gatekeeper returns to his gate. The clerk crunches off toward his lane. The old man is walked home, as always, by the stonemason, whose way it is not, by a detour 20 years old that neither of them has ever once mentioned. The lamp over the wine shop door goes out. The shutters knock home. The last public room of the ward is closed. And now the night belongs entirely to the households and the watch. The drum tower counts the watch, and the city sleeps. And its very last cup of the evening has been drunk warm in company, beside a brazier, among neighbors, which is the right way for a city's day to end, and always was. The children's day ends first, as it ends everywhere, and the household folds itself around their bedtime, the way households do in every century we have kept. So come back across the court to the east wing, where the beds are warming and the last arguments of the evening are being lost. The beds here are the North's great winter invention, and they deserve introduction before anyone climbs into them. The Tang, a wide platform of brick, built along the room's south wall, warmed from within by flues that borrow the kitchen stove's own smoke and heat, so that the family's cooking warms the family's bed as it passes on its way to the chimney. Nothing is wasted, warmth least of all. By evening, the brick has drunk the supper fire whole, and it will pay the warmth back all night, slow and even, through the quilts and felt spread over it, exactly as the mansion's bricks paid back its fires an ocean and 11 centuries away. A warmed bed the size of a small room, and the whole family of children sleeps on it together, in a heap, under silk floss quilts, which is to say that the children of Chang'an sleep precisely as the children of the bone house and the lodge and the nursery slept, warm, stacked, and in company. The youngest is carried to it mid-yawn, boneless, one chestnut still clutched in reserve. The boy of the copybooks comes reluctantly, arguing calendar precedents for staying up, loses on all counts, and is under the quilt in the time it takes his mother to trim the lamp. The eldest daughter will follow when her embroidery reaches the end of its thread, which she is already measuring with one eye. And then the questions, because it is the hour of questions in every language there has ever been. Why the snow does not fall up, whether the fish in the frozen pond are cold, and whether the plum tree is cold, and whether the camels we will visit are cold. The small accountant of comfort working down the roster of the world, exactly as her cousins did on the plains and in the ice, where the drum tower's sound goes when it is finished sounding, and the grandmother, sitting on the Kang's warm edge with her lap warmer, gives the answers grandmothers give, half sense, half story, wholly satisfying, and the questions space themselves wider, and the breathing between them grows longer, and at some point the questions stop coming, and only the breathing is left. The mother sets the night lamp in its niche, a small oil flame behind paper, the direct cousin of every night light we have ever lit, and stands a moment counting the quilted shapes as mothers count, though she knows the number. The drum tower counts the watch, and the city sleeps, and its youngest citizens are asleep already on their warmed brick. Questions spent, chestnuts surrendered, adding their small breath to the great communal quiet spreading room by room across 1,000,000 rooms. Before the elders' own bedtime, the evening keeps one more of its appointments, the oldest one, and if you have kept any of our winters with me, you know it on sight. The lamp low, the circle drawn close, the oldest voice in the house beginning. Winter is the storytelling season here as it was on the plains, and the grandmother is the household's teller. And tonight, with the snow ticking softly on the paper lattice and the brazier down to its steady glow. She tells for the grown ones, the daughter and the parents and the cook's wife, lingering in the doorway with her apron still on. She tells a story of the old capital from her own grandmother's time, about a girl who wove cloth so fine. The river goddess sent a carp upstream to ask for a bolt of it, and what the girl asked in return, and how the bargain went, patient and strange and kind, the way the old bargains in the old stories always go. We will not spoil her ending. It lands as her endings do, soft and just, like snow on a roof that was built for snow. Watch what the telling does, because it is the same medicine in every century. The daughter's needle slows and rests. The father, who audits grain ledgers for the empire, listens with his second cup forgotten at his elbow, 10 years old again somewhere behind his eyes. The story is old, and everyone present has heard it. And that is not a flaw in the evening, but the whole point of it. An old story retold is not information. It is a room the family enters together, furnished by every previous telling, warm from all the previous fires it was told beside. The grandmother keeps the pauses in their inherited places, her own grandmother's pauses, polished by a century of use, handed down as carefully as the bronze brazier, and less breakable. And when it is done, she says what she always says, that the story is longer in summer, which is a joke and also true, because winter tellings are trimmed close and warm like winter lamps. And then she permits herself to be helped up, and pats the daughter's embroidery in passing, one pat, high praise, and goes to her own warm kang in the east wing, escorted by the cook's wife and a lantern. The drum tower counts the watch, and the city sleeps. And in 100,000 courtyards, tonight 100,000 old voices have just finished 100,000 stories. And the great city is that much heavier lidded for it, which was, all along in every age, what stories after supper are for. Now the house begins its own descent towards sleep, and so this is the hour to ask the question every one of our nights must answer sooner or later. When the whole city lies behind its gates in the dark, who keeps the time? And the answer in Chang'an is grander than anywhere we have yet kept a night. So come, weightless through the snow, to the drum tower itself, and meet the clock that runs the capital. In a chamber of the tower, tended by officials of the Bureau of Astronomy on rotating watch, stands the clepsydra, the water clock, and it is a beautiful, serious machine, a stairway of bronze vessels, one above another, each feeding the next through a narrow throat, so that the top tank's hurry is calmed, stage by stage, into a trickle as steady as arithmetic. In the lowest vessel, a float rides, and from the float rises an indicator rod marked with the divisions of the day and night. And as the water rises, the rod lifts, and the current hour stands at the pointer, silent, wet, exact. Water, which in the river outside is wild and frozen at the edges, has been taught here to walk in single file, drop by drop, through the whole length of the dark, carrying time on its back. The night officers keep the watch by it. They trim the reservoirs, guard the water against freezing with braziers set near, note the readings in the log, and at each of the nights, 5 watches they give the signal, and the great drums overhead speak the hour to the city, measured strokes rolling out over the roof tiles to the ward gates and the palace and the caravanserais. And in the wards the local watchmen answer with their clappers, relaying the hour down the lanes, so that time in this city flows exactly as the clepsydra's water flows, from one great reservoir down through smaller and smaller vessels, until every sleeping courtyard has received its drop. We have kept time all these winters with humbler tools, notches on ivory, marks of the moon, incense, and bells. A tall clock ticking in a marble hall. This is the same office raised to imperial scale. A whole ministry of the night hours. Robed men in a cold tower reading a rod in the lamplight, so that a million sleepers need not wonder where in the dark they are. The city trusts the tower, the way a household trusts its banked fire. Nobody thinks of it. Everybody rests on it. The drums speak the hour as we stand here, measured strokes rolling south over the snow, answered faint and fainter by the clappers of 100 wards, like an echo learning courtesy. The drum tower counts the watch, and the city sleeps. You have now seen the counting itself, water walking downstairs in the dark, and it will go on all night, drop by drop, whether anyone watches or not. The tower keeps the city's time, but households keep their own, in a gentler currency. And before we rejoin our courtyard for the deep hours, learn the small clocks of Chang'an, because they are among the loveliest ever made. Here, time is told by fragrance. The incense clock is the night's timekeeper in 10,000 homes and temples. In its simplest form, it is a stick of incense, blended and cut to burn at a known pace, an hour to the notch, set upright in its holder over a bed of ash. In finer forms, it is a seal of incense, a long trail of powdered fragrance laid in a winding groove across a bronze plate, lit at one end at bedtime, creeping through its maze all night at its appointed crawl, so that a waking eye can read the hour by how far the small red ember has traveled through the pattern. And in the most charming form of all, a thread is laid across the trail at the hour one wishes to rise, weighted at each end with a tiny bronze bell. And when the creeping ember burns the thread, the bells drop ringing into the dish below. And that in the Tang dynasty is an alarm clock, and a civilization that wakes itself with falling bells and perfume has thought carefully about mornings. In our house tonight, the seal was lit when the children went down, a coil of sandalwood time creeping in its bronze plate on the shelf of the main hall. The house will read it in passing through the night, the mother when she rises to check the braziers, the cook when he wakes for the dawn fire, each of them glancing at where the ember stands in its maze the way the mansion's household glanced at the hall clock, the way the old woman laid her thumb on the ivory tally. And all night the timekeeping itself is a fragrance, sandalwood on the cold air of the hall, so that in this city even the hours have a scent, and a person waking briefly in the dark knows the depth of the night by nose alone, before their eyes are open, the way you know your own house's midnight by its particular silence. There is a deep gentleness in this arrangement worth carrying towards sleep. Time here does not tick. It breathes. It spends itself as perfume, hour into air. And morning arrives not as a hammer on a bell, but as the soft ring of two small bells let go by a burnt thread, an ash in a beautiful pattern, and a room that smells faintly of sandalwood and beginning. The drum tower counts the watch, and the city sleeps. And in the dark of the main hall the small red ember walks its bronze maze, patient as the clepsydra's water, quiet as snow, telling perfumed time to no one for everyone. Down in the ward, in the snowy lanes between the courtyard walls, the night has a walker, and his sound is the sound every child of this city falls asleep to. So let us walk around with him, well wrapped, unhurried, as the second watch deepens. He is the ward's night watchman, a steady man of middle years with a lantern on a pole in one hand and his clapper in the other, a split bamboo that speaks with a dry wooden knock, twice for the second watch, and he walks the lanes of the ward on his fixed round, knocking the hour at the corners, calling the low call that has been called in this language for centuries. The night is deep, mind your fires, Dry cold, beware the lamp. His voice is not loud. It is pitched exactly to be heard by anyone awake, and to wake no one. A skill his trade has polished for generations. And his knock and call move down the lanes and fade, and return by the far side, regular as the tower's drums, the city's smallest and nearest clock. Fire is his true errand, as it has been the true errand of every night watch we have walked with. A city of timber and paper respects flame the way sailors respect weather, and the watchman's lantern eye reads every gate he passes. Smoke where smoke should be, thin and straight from banked stoves, light where light is licensed, the gate lamp a physician's window, the temple's altar glow, and were there ever anything else? A flicker where all should be dark, a smell of scorch on the cold air. His clapper has another rhythm, urgent, that every sleeper's ear knows in its sleep and answers instantly. It has not sounded that rhythm in this ward for 6 years. The pride the watchman takes in that statistic is quiet and total, and it is the same pride exactly as the fire keepers in the bone house and the butlers in his locked doors. The watch kept so well that nothing ever happens. The snow squeaks under his felt boots. A cat crosses his lantern light and is filed under licensed. At the gate he exchanges 3 words with the walnut-faced keeper. The night's whole news, all quiet, and takes the warmth of the gate lamp for the length of one shared pot of tea before the next round, because the night is long and the tea is hot, and the 2 offices of the ward sleep, have kept each other company at this small flame for 20 years. The drum tower counts the watch, and the city sleeps, and through its 10,000 lanes the clappers knock their dry, soft knock, near and far all night, the sound of being watched over, which is, when you are warm in bed and 5 years old or 50, the single most comfortable sound the dark has ever learned to make. Away in the city's northwest, by the western market, the caravanserais keep their own warm nation of sleepers, and no night in Chang'an would be honest without them, because this city is the eastern end of the longest road on earth, and tonight the road itself is asleep in its stables and snoring. Come through the gate of one of the great caravan yards, past the lamp of its own gatekeeper. The court within is wide and trodden, ringed with arcades, stores below, lodgings above, and it smells gloriously of hay, charcoal, spice, and camel. The camels themselves, 5 dozen of them, are couched in ranks under the arcades, and out in the yard where the snow dusts their shaggy double coats, great 2-humped Bactrians, bred for exactly this cold, kneeling folded like enormous patient hills, jaws working their slow sideways night chew, breath pluming, bells silenced with straw wads for the night by an ancient courtesy of the trade. A camel asleep is a monument to the idea of rest. A yard of them is a whole quiet mountain range, gently steaming. Their cargo is stacked in the locked stores, and the manifest of one middling caravanserai on one winter night reads like a poem the whole world wrote together. Silk, of course, westbound, bolt upon bolt of this city's shining currency. Persian silverwork and Sogdian glass, eastbound arrived. Spices, dyes, gums, and medicines. Furs from the northern forests, jade from the far western rivers, wine from the oasis vineyards, and in the caravan master's strongboxes, letters, contracts, and news in 6 alphabets. The road these bales have traveled runs beyond the city's western gate for 4,000 miles, oasis to oasis, pass to pass, through deserts that must be crossed by starlight and mountains that close for whole seasons. And every man and beast in this yard has walked some piece of it. And beyond this yard it runs east no further. Chang'an is the road's last word, its terminus and its reason. Upstairs and around the braziers, the road's people sleep, and they are half the world in one inn. Sogdian merchants, the road's great middlemen, dreaming in their own tongue of accounts kept in another. Persians, Turks, men of the oasis kingdoms. A monk or two back from the west with scriptures in their baggage, grooms and cameleers and interpreters. Guests of a city that has seen every costume and heard every language and long ago stopped being surprised. The empire keeps this trade in order with its passports and its registered brokers, and keeps it welcome, and the caravanserai keeps it warm. And tomorrow the yard will be all bells and bargaining. But tonight the longest road on earth has folded its legs under it like its own camels, and sleeps, entire, from this snowy yard to the gates of cities no one here will ever see. The drum tower counts the watch, and the city sleeps, and among its million are guests from 4,000 miles of elsewhere, all breathing the same snow-hushed air, all kept by the same drums which have no accent, and count the watches of every nation alike. Back in our own ward, behind our own walls, there is one more room to visit before the deep hours, and it is the room without a roof. The garden. Every courtyard house keeps what garden it can, and ours keeps a good small one behind the west wing, and a winter garden at night, in this civilization above all others, is not an off-season disappointment. It is the season's whole point. Come through the moon gate, the round doorway cut clean through the garden wall, a circle of dark passage framing a circle of snow-lit quiet. The garden inside is small, a room indeed, and it is composed, deliberately, the way a poem is composed, of few things placed exactly. A pine dark green under its white load, bowing slightly, built by its nature to bow and not break. A single standing stone, chosen decades ago for its folds and hollows, wearing snow now along every ledge like a mountain seen from a province away. That is what it is meant to be, a mountain the size of a man, for a household that cannot travel to mountains. A bamboo grove no bigger than a bed, leaves whispering dryly under their frosting even in this still air. The only plant that talks in winter, and the pond, palm-sized as ponds go, frozen to a gray coin. The two carp asleep beneath the ice in the deep mud, pocket the gardener left them, as the children were assured twice at bedtime. And the plum tree, the courtyard's elder sister, leaning over the wall between garden and court, look closely at her bare black branches in the snowlight, because this is the secret the whole city is keeping tonight. The buds are already set, hard, small, countless, sleeping in their lacquer cases along every twig, and in the coldest week to come, before any other living thing dares, they will open, white and faint pink on the black wood in the snow, and the whole city will go out to look at them. Poets will sit up all night beside them. This civilization has decided, collectively, over centuries, that the most beautiful thing it knows is blossom in snow, courage wearing the costume of delicacy, spring announcing itself from inside winter's own house. That is why the pine, the bamboo, and the plum keep their winter company in gardens like this one, three friends of the cold season, as the poets of later ages will formally crown them. They are the garden sermon, preached in silence, endure gracefully, bend and whisper, and when the time is right, bloom early, bloom anyway. The snow sifts down into the little garden, evening its lines. Our footprints and the gardener's dusk sweeping are already gone. The moon gate holds its circle of white composure. The drum tower counts the watch, and the city sleeps. And in 100,000 small gardens, the three friends keep their green counsel under the snow, and the plum buds wait in their cases, holding spring in trust through the very middle of the night of the year. Now the household's last hour, and it belongs, as this hour has belonged in every winter we have kept, to the ones who close the house. So watch the mistress and the old servant make the night round, because a Tang courtyard is put to bed with the same touching hand as a lodge, a bone house, and a mansion, and the round is worth walking one slow time. The mistress goes sunwise through her domain with a small lamp. The kitchen fire, banked by the cook before he retired, checked under its ash blanket. Correct. Its warmth already threading the flues of the children's kang. The water jars, filled and lidded. A skin of ice expected by morning and allowed for. The stores sealed. The pickle jars in their cold row. The charcoal bin lidded against damp. The brazier of the main hall, raked, banked, ringed with its screen. Coals counted into the small bedroom braziers and carried out one by one like sleepy children. The lamps, all out now but the night lamp in the children's room and the small flame before the household shrine, where she stands the length of one breath, not asking anything, just standing, the way her mother stood. The old servant bars the compound gate, sets the bar's peg, and hangs the gate lantern's nitration of oil. He walks the walls once, checks the wood stack's cover, knocks the snow from the plum's lowest branch with 2 fingers, gently. An old argument between him and gravity that he always wins tonight and loses by morning. He looks in at the shadow play of the lattice once, finds it dark and even, and takes himself to his own warm corner room, where his wife has the kang hot and his tea cooling to drinkable, in the exact state of affairs he has earned. And the mistress, last of the household as the mother of the mansion was last, as the Lakota mother was last, stands a moment in the middle of her snowy court before going in. Walls white-capped, lattices dark, smoke thin and proper from the banked flues, snow falling soft into the square of her world. Every soul within it fed, warmed, counted, and asleep. Whatever the empire thinks it runs on, ledgers or armies or the mandate of heaven, she knows better tonight, and so do we. It runs on this: 1,000,000 courtyards closed correctly, one at a time, by somebody who touched everything once before lying down. She goes in. The paper lattice glows faintly 1 minute more, then dims to the night lamp's ember of light. The drum tower counts the watch, and the city sleeps. And now, behind our own particular wall, in our own small square of the great grid, it is entirely true. Deep in the night now, the third watch sounds from the tower, 3 great strokes rolling out over the snow, answered lane by the dry knock of the clappers. And this is the city's deepest hour, the bottom of the vault. So let us keep it the way we have kept the deep hour of every world, standing quiet in the middle of things, listening. The snow has thickened and slowed. It falls in large, patient flakes, straight down, windless, the kind of snowfall that seems less like weather than like the sky quietly shelving its stock. The city under it has gone from grid to texture. 1,000,000 roof ridges softened into one white corduroy sea, the avenues erased to their edges, the walls wearing 2 hands' depth along every coping. The gate lamps of 100 wards burn each in its amber globe of falling white. Nothing moves on the great avenues but the snow itself, and the occasional patrol, muffled riders passing at a walk, hoofbeats padded to silence, lantern swinging its small warm circle over the white, stand at the center, by the drum tower, and hear 1,000,000 people sleeping. It is not silence. We have learned that in every century. It is a floor of sound, deep and soft and woven. The clepsydras drip in its lamplit chamber, the night officers turning a page. Under and around it, spread over 5 miles of snow-hushed grid, the breathing of the greatest city in the world, courtyard by courtyard, kang by warmed kang, 100,000 banked fires ticking under ash, 100,000 paper lattices holding their small climates, oxen and camels and gatekeepers and poets, the emperor in his palace at the north with his own watch of lamps, and the scullery boys of 10,000 kitchens dreaming their own versions of the scullery dream, which we know by now in 3 languages, and it is always the same good dream. Warmth, standing, and someone else doing the pans. Hold the number a moment drowsily, without arithmetic. 1,000,000 people. It will be a very long time before any other city on earth holds so many again, and longer still before any holds them this quietly. Every one of the 1,000,000 had a day today. Every one of them was somebody's whole world once. At the hour they were born, the way the carpenter's new daughter is tonight, and every one of them is now doing the same single thing at the same time. The one act the entire species has always managed to perform in unison without a drum to command it. And the drums, wisely, command only its beginning and its end. Between the dusk roll and the dawn roll, the city needs no governing at all. Sleep governs. It is the oldest administration there is, and its census is perfect, and its taxes are dreams, and no dynasty has ever managed to fall while it was in session. This hour taught us its lesson first in a bone house on a frozen steppe, and it teaches the same lesson here at imperial scale, and it will not change in 11 more centuries. The stillness is not empty, it is full. It is the fullest hour the city owns, the harvest of every drum and gate and ledger and lamp, the whole roaring golden capital resolved at last into what it was always for, 1,000,000 people, safe, warm and unconscious, guarded by water dripping in a tower. The drum tower counts the watch, and the city sleeps, and at the 3rd watch of a snowy night, you can stand at the exact middle of the sentence and hear every word of it being true at once, in the largest city there has ever been. South of the markets, threading the city's grid, run the canals, the capital's watery streets, and they lie locked in white tonight. And a frozen canal at the 3rd watch is a corridor of perfect stillness, worth one slow walk before we visit the granaries. It exists to feed. By open season, the canals are the city's porters. Grain barges come up them from the great transport canal beyond the walls, which reaches away east and south for 1,000 miles. The empire's long water road, binding the rice of the far south to the mouths of this northern capital. Timber comes up them, and stone and firewood and charcoal, poled and towed to the quays, while the balladeers of the loading gangs set the rhythm. But winter closes the office. The barges are iced in at their moorings now, swept ranks of them along the quays, decks white-quilted, hatches sealed, tillers bound in straw, riding motionless in the ice like spoons set down in frosting. Their crews are home in the boat family's quarter, sleeping the boatman's winter sleep, which is long, communal, and untroubled by tide tables. The ice of the canal is a public thoroughfare of its own by day, children sliding the straight white mile inside the walls, porters cutting across with barrows where the watch permits. Tonight it is printed over with the record of all that traffic, then softened by the evening snow to a faint embossing, and the only fresh line on it is the neat stitching of a fox who crossed an hour ago, on the same errand as every fox in every one of our winters, and with the same complete indifference to dynasties. Under the ice, the water still moves, slow and dark, carrying its thin winter business toward the river, and the ice speaks over it, as river ice has spoken over every night we have kept in the cold. The long, low booms that roll away down the corridor of the banks, the bright cracks that skitter shore to shore, the children of the boat families, born to the sound, sleep through it as their cousins slept by the frozen creek and the ice-age river, and would wake, their mothers swear, only if it stopped. At the water gate, where the canal passes out through the city wall in its barred arch, the ice stands locked into the grate like white cloth caught in a comb, and the sentry above has wrapped himself to the eyes and thinks, on the record of all sentries everywhere, of supper past and breakfast coming. The drum tower counts the watch, and the city sleeps, and its water roads sleep widest of all, barges dreaming at their moorings. 1,000 miles of canal lying still under the same snow, resting the long arm that feeds the capital. Hard by the canals stand the granaries, and now we have reached the true strongboxes of this civilization. The buildings this whole city trusts the way a household trusts its banked fire. So stand with me in the falling snow before them, and feel what a full granary means, because no world we have wintered in has ever built the feeling bigger. They rise in ordered ranks inside their own walled and guarded precincts, great round-shouldered houses of rammed earth and tile, raised on platforms against the damp, ventilated by cunning, sealed against everything else. Inside them, in bins and matted mountains, sleeps grain by the 100,000 measures, millet of the north country, wheat, and canal-borne rice of the far south, poured in at harvest through the reckoning brushes of clerks like our father, sealed under official chops, logged in the registers to the last peck. The state keeps these stores as it keeps the walls and the watches against lean years, against flood and drought, for the army, for the court, for the price-steadying granary sales when markets pinch, and for the plain reason underneath all reasons, that a capital of 1,000,000 mouths must never, on any morning, wonder. The guards walk their rounds between the dark ranks with lanterns, and the granary cats walk theirs, a standing army of them, sleek, serious, hereditary, the same unbroken feline civil service we met in the mansion's larder and the market rows, holding here their empire's most important posting. The snow settles on the tiled shoulders of building after building, each one a hill of sleeping summer, 5 harvests deep in some of them, the son of 5 departed autumns stored as seed and starch in the dark, waiting with perfect patience to become porridge, buns, noodles, wine, the strength of porters, and the ink grinding of schoolboys, the whole running warmth of the city, next month and next year. We have stood before this idea in every century, and it has never once failed to calm the heart at midnight. The Ice Age families sealed pits under the frozen ground, the lodges painted cases, and the mansion's zinc-lined cold rooms, the castle's cellars, and the monastery's barns. And now the idea at its imperial fullness, plenty, gathered in the bright season, sealed by careful hands, guarded through the dark season, enough made visible, enough at the scale of 1,000,000 people. The city sleeps the way it sleeps partly, because these dark ranks stand here in the snow. And though almost no sleeper thinks of them tonight, every sleeper would name them within 3 guesses if you asked what lets the city close its eyes. The drum tower counts the watch, and the city sleeps, and its harvests sleep beside it, hill upon sealed hill, cat patrolled, clerk counted, snow-capped, the deepest larder we have ever stood before, holding morning porridge for 1,000,000 bowls. Beyond the walls, out in the enormous winter dark of the empire, one kind of traveler is still moving tonight, and the city in its sleep is connected to everywhere by the thin, warm thread of his passage. So let us follow it out for one chapter, as we followed the coal road and the milk train of another century, because an empire at night is held together by riders. From the capital's gates the post roads run out to the world, north to the frontier garrisons, west up the corridor toward the desert kingdoms, east to the sea, south down the canal country to the rice lands, and along them, spaced a fast hour's ride apart, stand the relay stations, walled yards with stables, beds, lamps, and registers. The Empire's nervous system built in courier stages. Tonight, somewhere out on each of those roads, dispatch riders are moving through the falling snow, official satchels sealed at their backs, passing from lamplit station to lamplit station across the sleeping provinces. Fresh horses waiting at each, hot millet and an hour's warmth for the rider when the schedule allows. The register signed, the satchel logged, the next stage taken at a trot into the white dark. The dispatches themselves are mostly the Empire's ordinary pulse, garrison returns and granary counts, appointments and audits, memorials from provincial officials that will cross our father's archive in a month. The paperwork of a continent breathing in and out. Urgency has its own faster gates, and the stations keep horses for it. But tonight, on the roads we can see from here, nothing gallops. The snow falls on the riders' capes and the horses' manes. The station lamps swim up out of the dark one by one, like the ward lanterns of a city stretched across 1,000 miles. A rider hands his satchel through lamplight to the station clerk and his stamped register, drinks something scalding with both hands around it, and is remounted and gone. And the station door closes on its warmth, and the road is dark and patient again until the next hoofbeats. There is a deep comfort in this, felt even by sleepers who could not name it. The capital does not sleep in isolation. It sleeps at the center of a web of small kept lights. Station to station, rider to rider, the whole vast winter country of the Empire strung with way stations of warmth like knots in a net, so that nowhere on any road is a traveler more than one cold stage from a lamp, a stable, and a register that expects him. The bone house kept one spark, and knew its neighbors spark across the valley. The Empire keeps 10,000 and calls it administration, and it is. But stand on the wall in the snow and look out at the nearest station lamp trembling far off on the north road, and you will see what it also is. The oldest signal there is. Someone is there. Ride toward the light. The drum tower counts the watch, and the city sleeps. And out along the dark roads its riders and stations pass the Empire hand to hand through the night, lamp to lamp, all the way to the frontiers, and nothing is dropped. One tower in this city looks neither at the streets nor at the roads tonight, but straight up, and we will end our long night walk there, among the coldest and most patient watchmen in the capital, because someone in Chang'an is keeping the watch on heaven itself, and it is the same watch, at the top of its profession, that a grandmother kept through a smoke hole so long ago. The Imperial Observatory stands on its platform in the official quarter, and its instruments wear the snow like ceremonial dress. The great armillary sphere, nested rings of bronze, aligned on the pole of the sky, hoops and pivots frosted white, built to hold any stars addressed the way a courtyard holds a family. The gnomons and siding tubes, the water clock of the observatory's own, the star charts in their cases, drawn and redrawn from centuries of nights, hundreds of asterisms, thousands of stars, mapped and named and filed, the sky administered like a beloved province. The night's officers are at their posts on the platform, wrapped in felt and fur, breath freezing on their collars, and their work tonight is the work of most nights, which is to say, magnificent routine. The snow clouds have covered the sky for hours, and so they log the cover, the wind, the hour of the storm's thinning, and wait, warming their hands at the brazier by Rhoda, because their duty is not to see stars. It is to be there when the stars are seeable. Deep in the night, when the clouds open one brief seam in the east, the winter constellations stand all at once clear in the gap, burning hard over the snow-lit roofs, and the officers move to their instruments without hurry, sighting, reading the rings, calling positions to the recorder, whose brush moves in the lamplight, adding one more winter reading to a ledger of the sky that runs back, unbroken, further than any other record of anything our species keeps. Then the seam closes and the snow resumes, and the log records that too, without complaint. Their purposes are imperial. The calendar must be exact, for the farmers and the festivals and the legitimacy of the throne itself. And the sky is red here as the state's own weather. But stand on the platform between the frosted rings and watch an old astronomer look up, unhurried, at the clearing heavens, and you will recognize the posture before you recognize the office. It is the old woman at the smoke hole. It is the grandmother on the snowy plains, reading the winter stars for the camp, small, warm, briefly awake under the enormous ancient sky, looking up, keeping the count. The instruments grew from bone tally to bronze rings, the record from notches to ledgers, and the feeling at the center never changed by 1 degree. The drum tower counts the watch, and the city sleeps, and above it the stars keep their own watches, faithful beyond all clepsydras, and a few cold, devoted men write down, for the million sleepers, exactly where heaven stood tonight. 2 wards over, in a rented room above a shuttered wine shop, one lamp is still burning past the 3rd watch, licensed by no ordinance but older than all of them. And we should pay it a visit, because this city in this century is producing something the world will keep longer than its silks, and it is being produced exactly like this, at night, alone, beside a small stove in winter. The room is narrow and cold at the edges. The poet is a middle-aged man in a padded robe, unsuccessful by every measure his relatives use. A minor posting lost, another not yet granted, funds low, prospects wintering like everything else. On the desk, the 4 treasures, and a jar of thin wine warming by the stove, and a page with 11 characters on it, which is not many, and which took him 3 hours, and which may be, though no one will know it for a century, worth more than the cargo of every camel in the Western market. He is writing about tonight. That is the thing to understand about the poets of this dynasty, and why we visit one at this hour. Their greatness is not built from marvels. It is built from exactly the materials our nights are built from. Snow falling on a lamplit gate, the sound of a distant flute in a cold city, a friend remembered across 1,000 miles of rivers, the moon on frost, the fisherman's light on the winter stream, the knock of the watchman's clapper spacing out the dark, the smallest furniture of the night, seen so clearly and set down so plainly that 11 centuries later, school children on the far side of the world will read 5 spare lines about snow and a river and feel, accurately, across all that time, exactly how quiet it was. He reads his 11 characters again and removes 2, which hurts and is correct. The poem is about the snow filling his courtyard, and an old friend serving at a frontier post beyond the mountains, and how the same snow, perhaps, is falling on them both. And that is all it is about, and that is everything. And he knows it is nearly right because it has become very simple. And simplicity, in his craft as in the gardens, is not where you start. It is where you arrive. He warms his hands at the stove, drinks his small wine, and looks out at the falling white with the expression of a man who has traded every worldly race for the one prize actually worth having, which is to be awake, warm enough, and paying perfect attention in the middle of the beautiful night, with ink that has not yet dried. The drum tower counts the watch, and the city sleeps, and here and there across its dark grid, a few lamps burn on like this one, the night watch of the language itself, and the city sleeps better for them too, though it will not read the results for years. Far at the city's north end, beyond its own moat and walls, the palace keeps its enormous lamplit state through the night, and we will look at it the way the city looks at it, from a respectful distance over the rooftops, because even a sleeping empire has a glowing heart, and it is beautiful in the snow. The palace city is a city of its own, courts within courts, halls upon terraces, roofs of glazed tile stepping up against the northern sky, and tonight every ridge and terrace carries its load of white, and the great halls stand like snow mountains lit from within. Lanterns burn along its galleries in disciplined constellations. The gate towers hold their braziers, and the watch there does not walk with clappers, but stands in armored stillness, changed by water clock schedule, guarding the still center of the turning empire. Somewhere deep in that lamplit country, the emperor sleeps, and around his sleep, the state itself stays half awake all night by design. In the archives, night clerks tend documents that cannot wait for morning, dispatches from garrisons a season's travel away, riding in relays along the post roads through this same snow. Out in the official quarter, the astronomers we stood with an hour ago are still at their frosted rings, keeping the calendar on which every farmer's spring in the empire depends. The great kitchens bank fires that will feed a court at dawn. An empire, seen at night, turns out to be the household of our courtyard multiplied by 10,000. Stores and lamps and watches and banked fires. The same offices at unimaginable scale, and at the center of it all, the same simple cargo being guarded. Asleep, the father of our house stands in the outermost courts of that palace himself, when his audience rotation comes due, as it has come due this very morning, one robed official among thousands in the winter dawn, and what he remembers every time is not the splendor. It is the silence of 10,000 people standing together in falling snow before first light, breath rising like the city's own chimney smoke, and the sound, when the throne was announced, of every sleeve in that enormous courtyard moving at once, like a single wave arriving on a single shore. Tonight the courts stand empty and white, holding their lanterns. The dispatches ride. The astronomers write. The dynasty, like the household, is asleep with its lamps trimmed. The drum tower counts the watch, and the city sleeps. And the palace sleeps at its head like the largest courtyard house in the world, which is all on a snowy night. It really is. In the ward's northeast corner, where the incense has been drifting thin all evening, the temple keeps the night in its own way, and its way is the oldest continuous night watch in the city. So let us end our long walk there, in the warm smell of sandalwood and snow. The temple is modest, a ward temple, not one of the great precincts, a courtyard of its own with a hall, a bell in its wooden frame, a few monks' cells along the wall, and a resident population of exactly 7 monks, 1 novice, and a temple cat of vast seniority. The altar lamps burn low and constant before the images, tended at intervals through the night, flames that have not been allowed to die in the memory of the oldest parishioner, which puts them in the same fellowship as every kept fire we have ever warmed at, the hearth of the bone house, the sanctuary lamps of the monastery, the household coals carried camp to camp across the plains. At intervals in the dark, the night office, a single monk on rotation rises, crosses the snowy court in felt boots, and keeps the small hours observance. A sutra recited low in the cold hall, a stick of incense set burning, and now and then, at the appointed times, the bell. It is struck softly at night, a fraction of its daytime voice, one round bronze note that blooms out over the sleeping ward, holds itself in the falling snow, and fades so gradually that no listener has ever agreed on the moment it truly ends. The sound is considered, quite formally in this tradition, a kindness broadcast to all beings within hearing, and whatever a sleeper's beliefs, the physics of it cooperates. A bell note at 3 in the morning, arriving soft through snow and paper into a warm, dark room, does not wake the sleeping. It informs their sleep. The night is deep, it says. Someone is up, praying for everyone. Continue as you were. The novice, who is 11 and from a farm village 3 days south, sleeps in his cell the profound sleep of the young, and will be teased at dawn gently for having heard nothing, and will someday, decades on, be the old monk who strikes the soft night bell for another ward's worth of sleepers, and will remember tonight, or 100 nights indistinguishable from it, as the shape of peace itself. The drum tower counts the watch, and the city sleeps. And under the drum's great arithmetic, the temple bell adds its single soft mercy at intervals all night. One bronze syllable, repeated patiently over the rooftops, meaning, as near as it can be translated, rest. Past the 4th watch the cold arrives at its deepest station, as it does in every one of our winters, and the city meets it the way all our households have met it, not with vigilance but with preparation already made. So walk once more through the sleeping compound and watch the defenses hold, because there is no better lullaby than watching preparation be enough. Outside, the snow has thinned to a fine sparse sifting, and the deep chill under it makes the ward's timbers speak. A beam knocks in the gatehouse. A tile shifts its snow with a soft shuffle. In the garden, the pine lets a bough load slide with a hush, and stands the straighter for it, and the bamboo whispers once at nothing. On the coping of the wall, the snow squeaks under the feet of the ward's cat, out on her own 4th watch inspection, unbothered, wearing the only coat in the city that needs no brazier. Inside, the house is a map of small-held warmths, and every one of them is holding. The children's Kang pays out its supper fire heat through the brick, steady as a low tide. The 4 quilted sleepers on it rearranged by the night into the ancient puppy-pile geometry of all our winters. The night lamp stands its watch in the niche. In the elder's room, the little brazier keeps its screened glow, and the grandmother sleeps her light old woman's sleep beneath the weight of 3 quilts and 60 winters, surfacing now and then as the old do, hearing the watchman's far knock, approving of it, going under again. The parent's room holds its own quiet climate, the mistress's ear tuned even asleep to the compound, the way the mother's ear was tuned in every century. The small sounds of her domain filed and passed, none of them wrong. And in the kitchen, the banked stove does the night's most important nothing, its coals wrapped deep in ash, warmth leaking at the exact intended rate into the flues, the Kang, and the sleeping house. The cook's tea kettle stands filled and ready at the stove's edge for the 5th watch. Preparation, banked at dusk, spending itself as promised through the smallest hours. We have watched this trick performed with mammoth bone and cottonwood, anthracite and applewood, and it is performed tonight with charcoal and brick and ash. And it works, it always works, and 1,000,000 rooms are warm at the bottom of the night, because 10,000 years of winters taught their people exactly this one patient art. The drum tower counts the watch, and the city sleeps, and the coldest hour walks the lanes like the watchman, trying every gate of every warmth, and finds them, 100,000 out of 100,000 holding. And in the deep hours the city dreams, 1,000,000 dreams under one snowfall, and by our oldest habit we will wander our way once around before morning, gently, wall by wall, since wandering is a lullaby and no one in the whole capital can correct us. In our courtyard, the children dream close to the surface, as ever. The boy of the copybooks dreams his characters walking, ink black and obedient, standing up straight on their strokes like soldiers at the audience, and his teacher, who in the dream is also somehow the drum tower, nodding. The small daughter dreams of the carp under the pond ice, who in her dream are awake down there in a warm lit room of their own, drinking tea, which is roughly what she was assured, and she will report it at breakfast as fact, and be believed by the right people. The eldest daughter dreams in pattern, plum branches assembling stitch by stitch across blue silk, the maker's good dream, shared tonight, though none of them will ever know it, with a beadworker on a snowy plain and a girl with a bobbin in a mansion attic, the same dream in 3 centuries, of work going well. The father dreams of ledgers that balance, and somewhere in the dream, the grain of the empire pours through his brush strokes like golden water, counted and safe, and his father watches from the doorway of the old farmhouse, satisfied, which is all that dream has ever been about. The mistress dreams the house's dream, rooms in order, jars full, everyone inside the walls, and needs nothing from it but its confirmation. The grandmother travels farthest, as the old always do, 60 years wide, festival lanterns and wedding red and faces gone and babies grown, all folded together without seam or sorrow. And if you asked her at breakfast, she would say she slept well, in the exact words of every elder in every winter we have kept. And beyond our walls, the city's million, the watchman home at dawn, will dream of quiet rounds. The gatekeeper dreams of the gate opening on spring. The night officers of the clepsydra dream, one hopes, of dry socks. The poet dreams his poem finished, and will wake to find it almost is. The camels dream whatever mountains of patience camels dream, folded in the falling snow, 4,000 miles of road asleep in their legs. The monks dream of the bell, or are the bell, the novice could not say which, being profoundly asleep, and the emperor at the north, in the exact center of the greatest state on earth, dreams, if heaven is kind, the same dream as the scullery boys, the only dream worth an empire, warmth and morning coming, and everyone still there. The drum tower counts the watch, and the city sleeps. And behind a million lattices, a million private worlds turn quietly in the dark, safe inside the one shared snowfall, from the palace to the smallest room above the wine shop, all of them tonight, one breathing thing. All night the city has slept inside them, and we have taken them as given, the way the sleepers do. But before the 5th watch, let us climb, weightless, to the top of the great walls themselves, and walk a stretch of the rampart in the falling snow, because the walls are the outermost keepers of everyone we have met tonight, and the view from their shoulders is the whole night at once. The wall is rammed earth, broad as an avenue at its base, wide enough on top for a chariot and team, and it runs its enormous patient rectangle around the sleeping city for mile after mile, gate tower to corner tower to gate tower, every angle of it manned, every brazier of it lit. The snow lies clean along the wall walk, printed only by the measured boots of the sentries, who pass on their rounds in fur and felt, spear butts ticking the frozen earth, breath streaming, exchanging at each meeting the low passwords of the watch, which change nightly, and which are tonight, though we should not know it, 2 words from an old poem about geese returning in spring. Look outward from the parapet, and there is the winter world the city is closed against, and it is not an enemy tonight, only enormous. The moat below, frozen and white, the suburbs scattered farm compounds, snow-buried, each with its own small banked warmth, the post road running north, empty, its nearest station lamp a trembling far spark, and beyond, the great dark plain of the empire, League upon league of snow-quilted winter country rolling away to mountains no eye can find tonight. Under a sky beginning in the east, to think about clearing. Somewhere out there are the frontier passes the ballads sing of, and the garrisons keeping their own colder watches, and the whole long map, the schoolboys of this city will spend their lives administering. From up here, you can feel the true shape of the night. One warm walled square of 1,000,000 sleepers, set down in the middle of 10,000 square miles of white silence, breathing. Look inward, and there is everything we have kept tonight, laid out like a lamplit chart. The dark grid of the wards, gate lamps at their corners like amber studs, the pale seams of the avenues, the drum tower's bulk at the center, its watchroom window one steady gold point, the market's walled squares, the canal's white threads, the palace glowing faintly at the north like a banked hearth, and over it all the 100,000 smoke threads rising straight in the stillness, the city's breath, visible, unhurried, entirely at peace. The sentries pass again, snow squeaking, and one of them pauses at the parapet where we stand, and looks out at the far station lamp, and in at the glowing grid, exactly as we have been looking, because sentries are connoisseurs of this view, the only audience it has ever had. The drum tower counts the watch, and the city sleeps, and the walls hold the whole warm sum of it, mile after guarded mile, the largest arms any of our nights has ever been held in. One more chapter before the morning machinery begins, and it is a chapter about almost nothing, which is, at this hour, the correct subject. Come down from the wall, back into the heart of the sleeping grid, and simply stand, and listen to what a snowfall sounds like when 1,000,000 people are asleep inside it, because no city will ever be this quiet again, and quiet this deep deserves a witness. The snow itself has a sound, or something just short of one, not the tick of rain, nothing so definite, a hush with texture in it, a faint continuous settling, like the world's softest fabric being endlessly folded. You hear it best against the things it lands on, the dry whisper on the bamboo in a garden behind some wall, the featherweight padding on the paper of 10,000 lattices, the occasional soft shuffle of a roof slope shedding its load into a lane, and the rounder silence afterward. Under it the city's sleeping sounds surface one at a time, spaced wide, each wrapped in white, a watchman's clapper, 2 dry knocks a lane away, the temple bell's soft night stroke, blooming and fading, a camel's sigh from the caravan quarter, carrying an improbable distance in the stillness, the boom of canal ice, felt as much as heard, a baby's brief cry in some courtyard, answered at once, extinguished gently, the oldest call and response there is, and beneath everything, when your ears have grown patient enough, the sound that is not any single thing, the breath of the city itself, 1,000,000 sleepers breathing behind paper and brick, 100,000 banked fires drawing their slow drafts, the whole vast grid respiring together under the snow, a sound at the very floor of hearing, less heard than believed, and once believed, unmistakable. We have listened for this sound in a bone house with 11 sleepers, in a lodge with 9, in a mansion with 30. Tonight it is 1,000,000 strong, and it is the same sound. It was always the same sound, rest happening at scale, and the snow is part of the instrument, not just the muffler of it. Fresh snow is mostly air, a deep soft quilt of trapped stillness laid over every sounding surface in the city. And it does to the capital what the felt lining does to the lodge, and the ash does to the coals. It banks the sound. Every clatter the day will make tomorrow is lying out there right now, wrapped and waiting. The cart wheels and the market gongs and the 10,000 arguments, all of it stored under the white, the way the fires are stored under the gray. Winter nights are quieter than summer ones in every city on Earth, but a snowbound northern capital at the fourth watch is the quietest made thing our species has ever assembled. 1,000,000 lives at 0 volume, and only we and the centuries and one wakeful poet will ever know how it sounded. That is to say, how it almost sounded, which is to say, hush itself deepening. The poets of this city, who are the best listeners it has, have a phrase they reach for on nights like this. They speak of hearing the snow deepen, not falling, deepening, the pitch of the silence lowering as the white grows thicker, the city's quiet becoming quieter by degrees all night, like a note descending slowly past the bottom of the scale. Stand here at the fourth watch's far edge, in the last hour of the deep dark, and you can hear exactly what they meant. The silence still descending, gently with the snow. The drum tower counts the watch, and the city sleeps, and the snow keeps deepening the quiet around every sleeper in it. And somewhere a poet lies awake on purpose, listening, so that 11 centuries from tonight, you will know exactly what this hour sounded like. It sounded like this. Like this. At the fifth watch, the last of the night's 5, the drums speak their 5 slow strokes over the snow, and deep in the sleeping city, a particular scattering of lamps begins to bloom, because this capital keeps one custom stranger, and more devoted than any we have met in all our winters. Its government rises before its roosters. The dawn audience waits at first light in the palace, and the officials of the empire must be there, robed, ranked, and composed, which means that in the coldest, darkest hour of the night, in ward after ward, the lamps of the officialdom are coming alight one by one. Our own father is among them this morning, his rotation having come due. The mistress is up before him, as she intended when she read the incense seal at midnight, and the kitchen stove is opened from its banking, and there is hot millet porridge and a warmed cup, and his court robes, brushed and laid out since yesterday, go on layer by layer in the lamplight, while the household sleeps on around the small industry of his leaving. Then the gate, unbarred by the old servant, who is somehow also up, because he has never once in 30 years not been up, and the father steps out into the dark lane with a lantern-bearer ahead of him, and joins the strangest gentle procession in the world. Down every lane of the ward, other lanterns are moving. At the ward gate, opened early for rank, they gather and thread out onto the great avenue, and there they meet the lanterns of 100 other wards, officials on horseback and on foot, muffled to the eyes, converging through the falling snow toward the palace at the north. Hundreds of small lights drawing slowly together across the white immensity of the city like fireflies agreeing on a direction. No one speaks much. Hoofbeats are padded by the snow. The lanterns bob and stream, poets among them, and this is attested, compose in their heads to pass the cold miles. And some of the poems this procession has produced, about lantern light on snow and the fading stars and the warmth left behind in a sleeping house, will outlast the dynasty itself. Behind them in 100 courtyards, the households that launch them bar the gates again and return, guiltlessly, to bed. The mistress does exactly this, pausing only to read the incense seal once more. An hour and a half of night remaining, and to look in on the children's Kang, 4 shapes correct, and the city grants her and all its kind the sweetest sleep there is, the second sleep, the one you fall into knowing the duty is already discharged, and walking through the snow toward the palace on somebody else's feet. The drum tower counts the watch, and the city sleeps, all but its government, which is riding to work through the dark in the falling snow, by lantern light, half asleep itself and composing. And so at last, at the far end of the great vault of the night, the hour before dawn comes to Chang'an. It comes the way it has come to every world we have kept a night in, quietly from the east, without any hurry at all, and not even the empire which regulates everything else in this city has ever thought to regulate this. It comes first as a loosening above the eastern wall, the sky beyond the watchtowers, black all night behind the snow, turns some color that is not yet a color. The snowfall thins, hesitates, and ends its work complete, and the last few flakes come down singly, like a musician's final grace notes, unhurried, precise. The clouds begin to shelve apart in the east. The morning star stands over the wall in the clearing gap, hard and bright. The same star exactly, you understand, that stood over the smoke hole of the bone house, over the lodge poles, over the mansion's slate roof, and it finds the city transformed. 5 miles of roof tiles gone soft and white and seamless. The whole great grid one unbroken snowfield raised on walls, smoking gently from 100,000 banked flues. Then the city takes up its day in its proper order, which is to say, by proclamation. From the drum tower, the dawn signal begins, the great roll that unlocks the morning, and ward by ward the answering booms of the gates coming open ripple outward across the whiteness. 100 soft thunders spaced across the plain of roofs. The temple bells follow, near and far, each striking its slow 108, bronze circles spreading and overlapping over the wards like rings on a pond, and under all of it the city stirs. Sweepers' brooms begin their first strokes on the temple steps. Well pulleys creak. The first mule carts move in the lanes, wheels squeaking on the new snow, and the smell of 10,000 breakfast fires rises into the brightening air. Millet and steam and charcoal, the whole capital exhaling its first warm breath of the day. In our courtyard, the morning comes up the way it has come up all our mornings. The cook's fire roars softly to life, and the kettle finds its voice. The old servant sweeps the night's snow from the walk, unhurried since no more is falling, and knocks the plum branch clear with 2 fingers. And this morning gravity concedes. The children's Kang releases its sleepers one tousled head at a time. The chief interrogator first, already asking. The grandmother has her tea at the Brazier's morning glow, and away at the palace, in the first gray-gold light, the drums of the audience sound across the courts, and 10,000 sleeves move at once, and somewhere in the middle ranks, a mild, exact, near-sighted man from a farm village stands in the falling away of the night, part of the machinery of the world, warmed by a porridge his wife rose in the dark to make. The long night is folded away westward now, over the walls, over the winter country complete, the drums and the clappers, the water walking down its bronze stairs, the incense creeping through its maze, the watchman's rounds and the soft temple bell, the poet's lamp, the camels in the snow, the million dreams behind the million lattices. All of it has done what nights are for. It rested the greatest city in the world, every single soul of it, and set them down safe in sight of morning. The drum tower counts the watch, and the city sleeps. It was true at the first watch, and it was true at the third, And it was true at the coldest hour. And now the counting is complete, and the sentence retires for the day, as true sentences may with its work done, until tonight, when the evening drum will say it all over again, 800 strokes, to a city that will lie down and believe it, because it has never once been wrong. Let it be true for you as well, whatever the night holds where you are. May your watch be counted by someone faithful, and may your city sleep, and you in it deeply, gently, all the way to the bells of a bright morning. Asleep now. This was worlds before morning. Good night.